Have you ever had that feeling that the rich are just playing a different game? That the gap between them and, well, everyone else is getting wider and wider? It's not just a feeling. And in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly why.
So let's start with a number that's pretty hard to ignore: 63%. According to a recent Oxfam report, that's the share of all new wealth created since 2020 that went straight to the richest 1%. I mean, think about that for a second. Nearly 2/3 of all the new money in the world in the hands of a tiny group of people.
So the big question is, how? How does that happen? Is it really just that they work harder, or are the rules of the game itself fundamentally different for them? We're about to pull back the curtain on the mechanics behind this whole thing to see what's really going on.
Okay, so let's dive right in. And a good place to start is with the common explanations. The ones you've probably heard a million times. You know this story, right? The idea that it's all about personal habits. The rich read books, they set goals, they invest, while the poor are just daydreaming and racking up debt. It's a simple, tidy narrative, but honestly, it misses the real story by a mile.
And look, while habits obviously matter, the data tells a very different story. The old idea that most of the super rich just inherited their money, it's mostly a myth. Less than 20% of today's billionaires got their wealth that way. The real answer is way more complicated, and it's actually built into the very system we all live in.
And this right here, this is the crucial part. You have to understand that our economy basically has two different tracks for getting wealthy. There's the path for people who earn a wage, and there's a totally separate path for people who own assets.
So for most of us, wealth comes from a paycheck. You work, you get paid, and that income gets taxed pretty heavily. But the wealthy? Their wealth comes from capital, from owning things that grow in value, like stocks, real estate, and businesses. And the rules for how that money grows and how it gets taxed are completely different, and frankly, a whole lot better. And this chart just lays it out perfectly. Look at this. For the middle class, the vast majority of their wealth is tied up in their home. But for the ultra-rich, their house is just a tiny sliver of the pie. Their wealth is overwhelmingly in assets that are designed to do one thing: grow. We're talking businesses and financial investments. And that distinction, well, it changes everything. See, owning assets isn't just about watching their value go up on a screen. It actually unlocks an entirely different playbook of financial strategies that are just not available to the average person.
Okay, get this. One of the most powerful strategies is nicknamed buy, borrow, die. And it's as simple as it sounds. Step 1, you buy assets that go up in value. Step 2, instead of selling those assets and paying a huge tax bill, you just borrow money against them. And since a loan doesn't count as income, that cash is totally tax-free. You live off that money. And step 3, the die part, when you pass away, your heirs inherit those assets, and the tax bases get stepped up. That's a legal way of saying the massive tax bill on decades of growth just disappears. Poof. Gone.
And this comment from a Reddit user just absolutely nails it. We aren't talking about some illegal back alley tax evasion here. The frustrating part, the part that gets people so angry, is that this is all 100% legal. It's tax avoidance, not evasion, and it's written right into the rules of the system.
So if the rules of the game are different, what's the actual engine that's driving this inequality, that's making that gap wider and wider every year? Well, a huge part of the answer, believe it or not, comes from an economic idea from all the way back in the 18th century. It's called the Cantillon effect, and it explains that when new money gets created, it doesn't spread out evenly like you might think. The best way to think about it is like pouring a jug of water onto a big, dry sponge. The top layer gets soaked immediately, right? But it takes a long, long time for any of that water to trickle down to the bottom. In our economy, those at the top of the sponge, the banks, the big corporations, the wealthy investors, are closest to the source of new money. They get it first when it's most valuable, and they use it to snap up assets. By the time that new money finally trickles down to the rest of us, its main effect is just inflation. Prices for gas, for groceries, for everything have already been bid up. And you can see the result right here. A huge increase in the money supply goes hand in hand with a huge increase in asset prices. So the people who own the assets get richer, while everyone else's paycheck just doesn't go as far.
So we can see the gap is widening.
and we can see the mechanics behind it. But so what? Why does this concentration of wealth at the very top actually matter for the rest of society?
Well, the consequences are profound. This isn't just some abstract economic debate. It leads to the hollowing out of the middle class, which has always been the foundation of a stable society. It threatens our democratic process when so much wealth and influence is concentrated in so few hands. And it creates these generational poverty traps, making it almost impossible for kids born into disadvantaged situations to climb the ladder.
And all of this has sparked a massive debate about what to do. Right now, there are two main camps. On one side, you have groups like Oxfam arguing that we need to significantly increase taxes on wealth and capital gains to fund public services and redistribute that money. But on the other side, people argue that instead of just taxing the top, we should focus on broadening ownership, creating ways for more people to own assets so that everyone can benefit from economic growth, not just the wealthy.
Ultimately, when you strip away all the jargon and the complex charts, it leaves us with one critical, fundamental question. Our economic system is an incredible engine for creating wealth. There's no doubt about that. But who exactly is that engine designed to work for?